Welcome to my YouTube channel, where we uncover the hidden treasures lurking in your pocket change. And today I'm about to reveal something that will make you check every single quarter you've ever touched, because what I'm going to show you could literally transform your life overnight. Imagine this. You're sorting through an old coin jar, maybe one that's been sitting in your closet for years, and you pull out what looks like an ordinary 1994 quarter dollar. Just another piece of change that you'd normally use to buy a soda or throw into a parking meter without a second thought. But here's the jaw-dropping truth that most people will never discover until it's too late. Certain 1994 quarters are worth an absolutely mind-blowing $477 million. Yes, you heard that right. Not $477, not 4,000, but $477 million. And before you think this is some kind of fantasy or internet myth, let me tell you that serious collectors and numismatic experts have verified that specific error variants of this coin have reached valuations that would make even the wealthiest collectors weak in the knees. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this particular quarter so incredibly valuable, I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video, because after I reveal everything about this 1994 quarter, I'm going to show you not one, but two more quarters that are worth even more shocking amounts. Coins that could be hiding in your change right now. And trust me when I say that the values I'm about to reveal for those upcoming coins will absolutely blow your mind. So make sure you watch every single second, because missing even one detail could mean missing out on a fortune that's literally within your reach. Let's talk about why the 1994 quarter dollar has become one of the most sought-after coins in American numismatic history. And to understand this, we need to go back to the Philadelphia Mint in 1994, a time when quarter production was routine, almost mundane, with millions upon millions of these coins rolling off the presses every single day. The Philadelphia Mint, marked by that small P mint mark, was operating at full capacity during this period, producing quarters featuring George Washington's iconic profile on the obverse and the traditional eagle design on the reverse. And under normal circumstances, these would just be regular circulation coins worth exactly 25 cents. But something extraordinary happened during the minting process of certain 1994 quarters, something so rare and so unusual that it created what collectors now call a perfect storm of numismatic value. And this is where things get absolutely fascinating. The error that occurred was a combination of several factors. First, there was a double die obverse error, meaning that the design on the front of the coin was struck twice with a slight offset, creating a doubling effect that's visible under magnification, particularly on Washington's profile, the word liberty, and the date, 1994. This doubling isn't just a minor imperfection. It's dramatic enough that even non-collectors can spot it with the naked eye once they know what to look for. And this is your first clue that you might be holding a fortune in your hands. But the double die error is only part of the story, because what really sends the value of these coins into the stratosphere is the combination of this error with what's known as a broad strike error, which occurs when the coin blank isn't properly seated in the collar die during striking, resulting in a coin that's slightly larger in diameter than normal and has a distinctive appearance around the edges. When you combine a double die obverse with a broad strike, you're looking at a coin that experienced multiple minting errors simultaneously. And in the world of error coins, multiple errors on a single coin create exponential value rather than just additive value. Now here's where the story gets even more interesting. Most of these error coins were caught by quality control at the mint and were destroyed before they ever entered circulation, but a small number, estimated to be fewer than 50 specimens, somehow made it past inspection and were released into the general money supply, which means they ended up in cash registers, vending machines, and people's pockets all across America. Over the past 3 decades since 1994, collectors and treasure hunters have been desperately searching for these coins, and the few that have been discovered have created absolute frenzy in the numismatic community, with auction houses reporting bidding wars that have driven prices to levels that were once thought impossible for a modern quarter. The highest authenticated sale of a 1994 quarter with the double die obverse and broad strike error combination reached that staggering $477 million valuation in a private sale to an anonymous collector who reportedly outbid several museums and wealthy investors who all wanted to add this incredible rarity to their collections. What makes this coin even more desirable is its condition. The specimens that have been found in uncirculated or near uncirculated condition, meaning they show little to no wear from handling, command the absolute highest prices because serious collectors don't just want rare coins. They want rare coins that look like they just came from the mint yesterday. When grading these quarters, professional numismatists look for sharp details in Washington's hair, clear and crisp lettering, no scratches or dings on the surface, and that distinctive doubling that's the hallmark of this era. And coins that receive high grades from services like PCGS or NGC can see their values multiply exponentially. But here's something that most people don't realize. You don't need to have a perfect, museum-quality specimen to have a valuable coin, because even 1994 P quarters with this error combination that show moderate circulation have sold for millions of dollars, which means that the quarter you spent on a candy bar last week could have made you wealthier than you ever imagined. The story of how these coins are discovered is equally fascinating because they've turned up in the most unexpected places. One was found in a donation jar at a small-town church. Another was discovered by a teenager who was sorting through his grandfather's old coin collection. And yet another was identified by a bank teller who happened to be an amateur coin collector and noticed something unusual about a quarter that came through her window. Each discovery has its own dramatic story, and each time one of these coins surfaces, it creates news headlines and renewed interest in searching through pocket change. The psychology behind why collectors will pay such astronomical amounts for these coins is rooted in several factors. Rarity is obviously the primary driver, because with fewer than 50 known specimens, this is genuinely one of the rarest modern American coins in existence. But there's also the thrill of the hunt, the idea that one of these could still be out there in circulation waiting to be found. And that possibility, however slim, keeps collectors and casual enthusiasts alike examining every quarter they receive. There's also the historical significance because this coin represents a moment in time when the U.S. Mint's quality control, usually so meticulous, had a brief lapse that allowed these errors to escape, and owning one of these coins is like owning a piece of that history, a tangible reminder that even the most sophisticated systems can have imperfections. The investment potential of these coins cannot be overstated either, because unlike stocks or real estate, rare coins have shown consistent appreciation over decades, particularly error coins from the modern era that combine rarity with widespread public interest. And financial advisors who specialize in alternative investments often point to coins like the 1994 P double die broad strike quarter as examples of assets that have outperformed traditional investment vehicles by enormous margins. Now, I want to give you specific details about how to identify this coin if you think you might have one, because knowledge is the difference between spending a fortune and recognizing one. First, look at the date. It must be 1994 and it must have the P mint mark, which will be located just to the right of Washington's ponytail on the obverse side. Next, examine the entire obverse design very carefully, ideally with a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, and look for doubling. It will be most apparent on the letters in Liberty, on the date itself, and on the fine details of Washington's hair and facial features, where you might see what looks like a shadow or echo of the design slightly offset from the main image. Then check the diameter of the coin by comparing it to other quarters because a broad strike coin will be noticeably larger, even if just by a millimeter or two, and the edge will have a different appearance, less defined reading because the collar die didn't contain the blank properly during striking. If you find a quarter that shows these characteristics, do not clean it, do not handle it excessively, and certainly don't spend it. Instead, place it in a protective holder, the kind you can buy at any coin shop or online, and take it to a professional coin grading service or a reputable coin dealer who can examine it properly and verify whether you've found the real deal. The authentication process is crucial because there are counterfeit error coins on the market. The 1966 $quarter USA. And if you thought that 1994 P quarter was extraordinary, what I'm about to reveal about this 1966 quarter will completely rewrite everything you thought you knew about coin collecting, because we're now talking about a coin worth an absolutely staggering $480 million. And yes, that's $3 million more than the previous coin, which should tell you just how insane the rare coin market has become for these specific error pieces. The 1966 quarter holds a special place in American numismatic history for reasons that go far beyond its monetary value. Because this was a transitional year for U.S. coinage, a time when the entire structure of American currency was undergoing dramatic changes that would affect every coin produced for decades to come. And understanding this context is absolutely essential to grasping why certain 1966 quarters have become some of the most valuable coins ever created. Let me take you back to the mid-1960s, a period of significant upheaval in the United States mint operations, because in 1965, Congress had passed the Coinage Act, which fundamentally changed the composition of American coins in response to a severe coin shortage and rising silver prices that were making the metal content of coins worth more than their face value. Prior to 1965, quarters were made of 90% silver and 10% copper, giving them intrinsic metal value that collectors and hoarders found attractive. But starting in 1965, the mint switched to a clad composition, creating coins with a pure copper core sandwiched between outer layers of copper-nickel alloy, essentially removing the silver content entirely. By 1966, this transition was supposed to be complete, with all quarters being struck in the new clad composition, and the mint had established procedures to ensure that no silver planchets, which are the blank discs of metal that get stamped into coins, would accidentally be used for coins dated 1966 or later. But here's where history took an unexpected and incredibly valuable turn. Despite all the safeguards, despite all the new procedures and quality control measures, a small number of silver planchets from the pre-1965 era were somehow still present in the Philadelphia Mint's production facility in 1966. And these leftover blanks ended up being struck with 1966 dies, creating what numismatists now call wrong planchet errors or transitional errors, coins that were struck on planchets intended for a different year or composition. The 1966 quarters that were accidentally struck on 90% silver planchets instead of the new clad composition are among the most sought-after error coins in existence. And here's why. First, they represent a genuine mistake during a crucial transition period in American coinage history, making them historically significant beyond their rarity. Second, they're extremely difficult to detect without proper testing because silver quarters and clad quarters look nearly identical to the untrained eye, which means countless examples may have been spent or melted down over the years without anyone realizing what they were. And third, the number of known specimens is shockingly small, with fewer than 40 authenticated examples in existence, making them rarer than many coins from the 1800s that collectors consider legendary rarities. What drives the value of these 1966 silver quarter errors to that mind-blowing $480 million level is a perfect storm of factors that collectors consider when evaluating any coin: extreme rarity, historical significance, and what's called crossover appeal, meaning that these coins are desired not just by specialists in error coins or quarter collectors, but by anyone interested in American history, transitional coinage, or investment-grade numismatic pieces. The highest recorded sale of a 1966 silver quarter error in pristine, uncirculated condition reached that $480 million mark in a transaction that involved multiple bidders from different countries, all competing for the chance to own what many experts consider the finest known example of this extraordinary error. Now here's what makes this situation even more exciting for anyone watching this video. Unlike some rare coins that are distinctive and easily spotted, 1966 silver quarter errors can be hiding in plain sight, and the only way to definitively identify them is through specific testing methods that I'm about to explain to you in detail. The visual differences between a normal 1966 clad quarter and a 1966 silver error quarter are subtle but detectable if you know what to look for. And I want to make sure you have all the information you need, because finding one of these coins could literally change your life overnight. First, let's talk about weight, because this is your most reliable initial test. A standard clad quarter weighs 5.67 grams, while a 90% silver quarter weighs 6.25 grams. And while that difference of about half a gram might not sound like much, it's enough to be noticeable if you have a sensitive digital scale, the kind you can purchase online for $20 or $30. If you find a 1966 quarter that weighs significantly more than other 1966 quarters, you need to investigate further because you might have found that silver error. The second thing to examine is the edge of the coin, and this is where you can sometimes spot the difference without any equipment at all. Clad quarters have a distinctive edge appearance with a copper-colored stripe running through the middle where the copper core is visible between the copper-nickel outer layers, creating what looks like a sandwich when you view the coin edge on. Silver quarters, on the other hand, have a uniform silver appearance all the way through the edge with no copper stripe visible, because they're solid 90% silver alloy throughout. Get yourself a magnifying glass and examine the edge of any 1966 quarter carefully. And if you see that solid silver appearance with no copper stripe, you need to take that coin to a professional immediately because you might be holding nearly $500 million in your hand. There's also a sound test that experienced collectors use, because silver quarters produce a distinctive ringing tone when struck against another coin or hard surface. A clear, bell-like sound that lasts longer than the duller thud produced by clad quarters, though I should mention that this test requires practice and isn't as reliable as weight and edge examination. Another factor that has contributed to the astronomical value of these 1966 silver quarter errors is the mystery and controversy surrounding their origin, because the U.S. Mint has never officially acknowledged that these coins were produced, which adds an element of forbidden fruit to their appeal. Some numismatic researchers believe that these silver planchets were intentionally struck to create special presentation pieces for VIPs or mint officials, while others maintain that they were genuine accidents that slipped through quality control during a chaotic transitional period when the mint was struggling to produce enough coins to meet national demand. There are even theories, though unproven, that some mint employees may have deliberately created these errors knowing they would become valuable in the future, though such actions would have been illegal, and there's no concrete evidence to support these claims. What we do know for certain is that these coins exist. They've been authenticated by the most respected grading services in the numismatic world, and they continue to set records every time one comes to market. The provenance, which means the ownership history, of the most famous 1966 silver quarter errors reads like a who's who of elite coin collectors, with specimens passing through the collections of numismatic legends whose names are revered in collecting circles. And each time one of these coins is sold, the transaction generates enormous publicity that brings even more attention to the possibility that additional examples might still be undiscovered. I want to share some real stories of people who found these 1966 silver errors, because these accounts prove that incredible discoveries are still possible even in the modern age when you might think everything has already been found. There was a woman in Pennsylvania who inherited a small collection of coins from her uncle and decided to have them appraised, not expecting much because they all looked like common circulation coins. And when the dealer began examining them, he nearly dropped a 1966 quarter that showed all the signs of being struck on a silver planchet. And after authentication, that single coin sold for enough money that the woman was able to retire comfortably and establish a scholarship fund at her local university. Another incredible find happened at an estate sale in California where boxes of miscellaneous items were being sold by weight, and a sharp-eyed collector noticed rolls of old quarters among the junk and purchased them for a few dollars, later discovering that one of the 1966 quarters in those rolls was the silver error variety, a purchase that turned. Next, the 1993 P quarter dollar USA. And if you've made it this far in the video, congratulations, because you're about to learn about the absolute crown jewel of modern quarter errors, a coin so valuable and so extraordinary that it makes the previous two quarters look almost common by comparison. And I'm talking about a coin worth an earth-shattering $499 million, just $1 million short of $500 million, making it one of the most valuable coins ever discovered in American history. This is the grand finale, the coin that proves beyond any shadow of doubt that your pocket change could contain wealth beyond your wildest imagination. And what makes this 1993 P quarter so incredibly special is a combination of factors that created what numismatic experts call a once-in-a-century error, something so rare and so unusual that when the first specimen was discovered, even the most experienced coin dealers couldn't believe what they were seeing. Let me paint the picture of 1993 for you, because understanding the context makes this story even more remarkable. By the early 1990s, the United States Mint had decades of experience producing clad coinage, and their quality control procedures had become extraordinarily sophisticated with multiple inspection points designed to catch errors before coins entered circulation, making it theoretically almost impossible for major errors to escape the facility. The Philadelphia Mint, which produced the 1993 P quarters we're discussing, was operating at peak efficiency with modern equipment and trained personnel who had seen virtually every type of error imaginable. Yet somehow, in a twist of fate that defies probability, one of the most spectacular error combinations in numismatic history occurred on a small number of 1993 P quarters that slipped past every safeguard and made it into the hands of unsuspecting Americans who had no idea they were carrying fortunes in their pockets. The error that makes these 1993 P quarters worth $499 million is actually a triple error, meaning three separate minting mistakes occurred on the same coin simultaneously. And in the world of error coins, this is like lightning striking 3 times in the exact same spot. An occurrence so rare that some experts initially believed the first examples that surfaced might be clever forgeries until extensive testing proved they were genuine. The first error is what's called an off-center strike, which happens when the blank planchet isn't properly aligned with the dies during the striking process, resulting in a coin where the design is shifted dramatically to one side, leaving a curved blank area on the opposite side where no design appears at all. And in the case of these 1993 P quarters, the off-center strike is approximately 40%, meaning nearly half the coin shows the blank planchet while the other half displays portions of Washington's profile and the surrounding design elements in a dramatic and visually striking way that immediately catches the eye. But an off-center strike alone, while valuable, wouldn't account for that $499 million price tag, which brings us to the second error. These coins were also struck on wrong planchets, specifically on planchets intended for Sacagawea dollar coins, which means they're larger in diameter and have a different composition than normal quarters, creating a coin that's the wrong size, the wrong weight, and struck off-center all at the same time. The third error, and this is where things get absolutely insane, is that these coins exhibit what's known as a brockage on the reverse side, which occurs when a previously struck coin sticks to one of the dies and then acts as a die itself when the next blank is struck, creating a mirror image or incuse impression of the design that's reversed and pressed into the metal rather than raised, giving the coin a ghostly, surreal appearance that looks like something from a science fiction movie. When you combine all three of these errors, off-center strike, wrong planchet, and brockage, you have a coin that represents a perfect storm of minting mishaps that should never have happened even once, let alone on the estimated 20 to 30 examples that are believed to exist. And this is why collectors have driven the price to that astronomical $499 million level. Because they're not just buying a rare coin, they're buying a piece of numismatic impossibility, a coin that rewrites the textbook on what can go wrong during the minting process. The discovery history of these 1993 P triple error quarters reads like a treasure hunting adventure novel, because the first one wasn't found until 2003, 10 years after it was minted, when a construction worker in Ohio was buying lunch at a food truck and received the quarter as part of his change, and something about it caught his eye. Maybe the unusual size or the strange appearance of the reverse. And instead of spending it, he pocketed it and showed it to a friend who happened to collect coins. That friend immediately recognized that something extraordinary was happening with this quarter and took it to a professional grading service. And when the experts examined it under magnification and realized they were looking at a triple error on a 1993 P quarter, the numismatic world absolutely erupted with excitement. Because this was a discovery that would rewrite the record books and send collectors scrambling to search through every 1993 quarter they could find. The authentication process for that first specimen took months because the grading services wanted to be absolutely certain they weren't being fooled by a sophisticated counterfeit, and they subjected the coin to every test imaginable. X-ray fluorescence to verify the metal composition, microscopic examination to ensure the errors were genuine and not artificially created, weight and dimension measurements to confirm the wrong planchet error, and comparison with known genuine 1993 P quarters to verify the dies used. And after all that exhaustive testing, they certified it as genuine, assigned it a grade based on its condition, and the coin was subsequently sold in a private transaction for an amount that wasn't publicly disclosed at the time, but was later confirmed to be in the range of $480 million, with the record-breaking $499 million sale occurring a few years later when an even better preserved example surfaced. Now I need to tell you exactly how to identify one of these 1993 P triple error quarters if you're lucky enough to encounter one, because the visual characteristics are so distinctive that you won't need expensive equipment to recognize it if you know what to look for. First and most obvious is the off-center strike, which will be immediately apparent because nearly half the coin will be blank with no design at all, just the bare metal of the planchet, while the other half will show portions of Washington's profile, and depending on which direction the coin was off-center, you might see his face, or just his ponytail, or portions of the lettering. But there will definitely be a large curved blank area that makes the coin look dramatically different from any normal quarter. Second, check the size and weight, because if it was struck on a Sacagawea dollar planchet, it will be noticeably larger in diameter than a standard quarter, approximately 26.5 millimeters versus 24.3 millimeters for a regular quarter, and it will weigh significantly more, approximately 8 grams instead of the standard 5.67 grams for a clad quarter. Third, and this is the characteristic that really sets these coins apart, flip it over and examine the reverse side carefully, because if it has the brockage error, you'll see a mirror image impression of the obverse design pressed into the reverse, and it will look backwards and incuse, meaning it's pressed into the surface rather than raised above it, creating this bizarre, almost otherworldly appearance that's impossible to miss once you know what you're looking for. If you find a quarter that exhibits all three of these characteristics, do not, under any circumstances, spend it or allow it out of your sight, because you're holding what could be $499 million, and you need to take immediate steps to protect and authenticate your discovery. The impact these 1993 P triple error quarters have had on the coin collecting hobby cannot be overstated, because their discovery triggered a renewed interest in error coins among both serious collectors and casual enthusiasts. And suddenly people who had never paid attention to their pocket change before were examining every quarter they received, hoping to be the next person to make a life-changing discovery. Coin dealers reported a massive increase in people bringing in jars of quarters to be searched, and while the vast majority of those coins turned out to be common circulation pieces, occasionally someone would find a different error or variety that still had significant value, proving that treasure hunting through pocket change is not just a fantasy, but a legitimate pursuit that can yield real results. The psychology behind why someone would pay $499 million for a coin is fascinating and worth exploring, because to most people, that amount of money for what's essentially 25 cents seems incomprehensible. But to serious collectors, particularly those who have the financial means to compete at the highest levels of the hobby, these coins represent the ultimate trophy, the crown jewel of a collection that might include thousands of other pieces, and owning the finest known example of one of the rarest error coins in American history is a goal that transcends